Okay, we're recording. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have the tea here because today I'm going to be telling you guys a story time and spilling tea about working in retail, but at a very particular store at a particular time of year. You guys probably already know because the title of this, but to put you in the mood, let's celebrate the fact that it is October. It is spooky season, it's Halloween season, and it is like the best time of year. I have said this before, but I love October. It's my favorite time of year for so many reasons. I have so many good memories around like just the autumn season in general. So in my world of doing cosplay, I have overcome my fear of what I would call, I guess, like public cosplay. So going out in a cosplay costume and having ordinary people see you in it and feeling uncomfortable. However, I know that this is like a massive fear for a lot of cosplayers out there. And the one thing that I really love about October is the fact that no matter what you're dressed like this month, no one cares because everyone thinks that you're going to a Halloween event or a Halloween party and they could really just care less. Just the other day, I was walking to the grocery store and I saw two girls dressed as tacos, and not a single person slowed their car, gawked at them, said anything, or made them feel uncomfortable in any way. And I absolutely love that. It just feels so nice for everyone to be like more accepting during this time of year, and just it equalizes everyone. So if you're out there eating pumpkin pie, drinking your pumpkin spice latte, watching scary movies, getting your candy bowl ready, carving pumpkins, all the fun autumn Halloweeny stuff. I hope that you can put this video on in the background and listen to this fun story time, because I'm going to be taking you guys all the way back to when I was 16 and I worked at a party Halloween store, and it is a fun ride and I really can't wait to take you guys back. So one thing that I have to mention is that Halloween in my family, even before I like watched anime or got into cosplay or anything, Halloween has always been a really special time. I come from a very creative family. And when I say creative, I'm not talking about just artists. I'm talking about like crafters and creators of all types. My mom, my grandma, my nana, and tons of other people in my family were all massively into sewing, crafting, putting things together, like all these different types of art. So as a kid, I felt that there were no limitations about what I wanted to be for Halloween. And that's probably why I ended up doing cosplay when I got into high school. So when I was in preschool, I must have been like 5 years old. I told my parents I want to be a unicorn for Halloween. So my mom actually went to the store, bought a Barney costume of all things, like a purple Barney onesie that you put on a preschooler. And she sewed a mane and a tail out of straw onto it and made like a horn that she sewed and put sparkles all over it, put me in it, and sent me off to preschool. And there's actually a picture of me. There's all these little kids because we do a Halloween parade where they'd make us, wear our costumes, and we had to go like parade around the little preschool, and the parents would come and watch, and it was a great time. But there's this funny picture of me in my like Barney onesie with big fake face and eyes that my mom tried to make kind of look like a unicorn, and like a horn and this mane and tail. And it's just so representative of who I am as a person, always having to go above and beyond. In elementary school, I dressed up as a princess for many years, probably like first, second, third grade, definitely went as different princesses. Just whatever we could put together at home, because again, I grew up kind of poor, so we had to get a little bit more crafty. And then by the time 5th grade rolled around, I wanted scary. So we had a family friend that was throwing out or like donating thrifted old stuff, and they were thrifting an old cheerleading uniform from high school, and I saw it and I went, oh, I want to be a zombie cheerleader. So face paint of the undead and white makeup and this cheerleader outfit that we smeared dirt and like ripped and stuff all over, and there I was, the undead cheerleader, going trick-or-treating. So it has always been really awesome to think back on all the fun costumes that I have done during Halloween. Not only that, growing up in the late 90s and the early 2000s, just Halloween had a very particular aesthetic that was extremely like kitschy and campy and fun and cozy. I grew up in Washington, which meant every time we went trick-or-treating, it was really cold and usually rainy. So no matter what you were dressed as, you were always dressed as that character with a rain jacket or a sweater. So you would be like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle or a Power Ranger with a sweater. And as kids, we always hated it. I would always wait until we were out of sight of my parents and I'd rip off my coat and like throw it in my candy bag. Okay, all that to say, you guys can probably tell that Halloween holds a very, very special place in my heart, which is why I'll be telling you guys this story today, because I think it's equal parts interesting and also equal parts very chaotic and very funny. So let's go all the way back to 2008 when I was 16 years old. Now, at the time, I really needed money because, again, came from a very poor family. And if I wanted to do anything, go anywhere, or even have my own cell phone, I had to pay for everything myself. So a good indicator of that is as soon as I became of legal age to work, which was 15 years old, I got my very first retail job, which I worked at for exactly 2 months and then was promptly fired because I was 15 and they didn't actually need a worker. And it was kind of crazy. Eventually, I'll tell you guys that story because that is actually very funny. I worked at a young girls' clothing store and it was also really, really interesting time. But when I was 16, I got my second retail job. Now, this was actually at a party store, but we're calling it the Halloween party store, and that's for several reasons. One of them being that they definitely made like 90% of their annual profits only in the autumn season, and specifically right before and around Halloween when people really needed costumes for their kids and really needed party supplies for Halloween parties. So 16 years old, I am applying to work at this party store with one of my best friends who I'm still very close friends with today, and we still even talk about our experience working at the store because it was really fun. Now, I highly recommend that if you are going into your first job, especially retail, doing it with friends is really fun because when you get your schedules overlapped, it is really awesome to be able to work with people that you can joke around with and have a good time and who can support you, because sometimes retail sucks to work at, as we all know. Now, the funny thing about this is we both applied and we both got hired, and even before we applied, I had heard this rumor, which I found out to be true, which is that the owners did not like teenagers in the slightest. They despised teenagers. And after working there, I can definitely tell you that was true. However, I didn't really hold any malice or be upset about this. I think that they had just been in business so long, they had seen teenagers in retail and how cruddy they could be at their jobs and disrespectful and all that stuff. So they had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. At the time, we thought it was really funny. And again, we knew we were coming in for seasonal work. We were going to work here from August to like the first week of November, and that was probably going to be it. So I was just going to make the time I had there as fun as possible. Now, before I go any further, no, I did not work at Spirit Halloween. I wish I had, because Spirit Halloween is super awesome. I love scary stuff and animatronics and whatever new line of like Halloween vintage movie stuff is like coming out. All that stuff is so cool. This was actually a locally owned party store and they were open all year round. So this was a place known in my town for going to last minute when you needed balloons or streamers, or you were throwing like a baby shower and it had to be in lilac and cream colors, or if you needed party candy for a piñata or stuff like that. But Halloween in particular was the big month. It was the really big deal. So around this time of year, they would hire a bunch of high school and like really early college age kids, students to work the Halloween season, and that's how I got hired. The other thing about me working there before I even start the storytelling is that I didn't drive at the time. Little known secret, I didn't get my license till I was like 21. And that was only because my husband was amazing. He was my teacher. He took me to go get it. He let me practice in his car. It was awesome. But because of that, I didn't actually have the ability to drive back and forth. So what I did do is I rode my bicycle. I only lived a few miles away from the store, which was right in town. and I have a lot of fun memories of riding my bicycle. And it's windy out, it's October, there's like leaves blowing, it might be a little misty. It's kind of like you can feel the spookiness in the air. And there's something about like riding a bicycle as a teenager. I always see old movies where, they're riding bikes somewhere, and I was a very big bicycle rider. So all of this is kind of like intertwined in my brain as this very special nostalgic time in my life. However, Washington equals dumping rain in October a lot of days. So I did have to get rides with coworkers really often, or beg my friends or family members for rides when the weather was really terrible. But again, retail, short stint, teenager, just doing it for fun. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what did I actually do at this Halloween party store? So there were kind of no limits to what I had to do while I was working there. Like, I didn't have an actual title beyond just like store associate, and I had to wear a little badge and I had to wear a little apron when I first got hired. I think it was like at the end of August. So most of my job was being yelled at by managers to go do something because I didn't look busy enough, which is like said for all retail. So most of the time I would walk up and down very trashed aisles that had Halloween accessories, costumes that were like on display on racks, and I would have to pick things up, put them back together, make it look nice, clean up spills, clean up messes. And the worst part of this is like, when you spend so much time doing organization and cleaning just to turn around and see some sort of person, kid, customer, someone over there digging through stuff, letting things fall on the ground, making it a huge mess, and they just walk away. And then I have to spend another hour doing the same job I just did. It is very not satisfying, and it makes you want to rip your hair out. I also watched a lot of people shoplift because at the time, the store had like a rule that if you suspected a shoplifter, you were supposed to tell a manager, and then you were supposed to go follow that person around to make them uncomfortable, but you couldn't actually approach them. And you couldn't actually do anything. So a lot of times people would come in, they would grab whatever random item off a shelf, and they just walk out with it. And I'm talking like average everyday people. It wasn't even like super sketchy people. So that was interesting. Now, one of my main duties was that I had to climb up and down ladders in this inventory area. So out on the floor, they had costumes that you could like try on and look at the different sizes to like compare. But when you wanted to actually purchase a costume, you had to go back to this counter, and it was this inventory counter, and you tell the person what costume it was. They'd look up like the little code and what size you wanted. And most of the time I had to walk up and down a very tall 8-foot ladder to get to these costumes, bring them down, just to have a middle-aged lady yell in my face that that's not what she wanted, or it didn't look right, or she wanted something else now. And I'm also scared of heights. So getting up and down ladders when you're like shaking and your knees are knocking together is it's definitely an experience. And it made me realize that as long as I do it really, really fast, I just won't think about it. Again, I got yelled at by Karens every single day. Like, working that job made me so sympathetic to every retail worker out there. And since then, I have made it my duty to clean up my own mess, be polite, be kind, put my basket back, not mess things up, because I already know how hard it is to work in retail and the kind of complaints that you get from people. I also had to work at the cash register a lot, but we would go through periods where it'd be really slow and really fast. So I would keep books under this like little register area. And when it was really slow and no one was around, I was actually like underneath the register looking down and reading books. That was the year I read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which had, I think, like just come out. And the store also sold some Halloween spooky classic books. So sometimes when I'm bored, I would take one up to the register and read as much as I could. However, there was also many times when the stupid register, which was probably from the 80s or early 90s, so at least 15 or 20 years old, would just not work and would break down. And it would only break down when I had a line of people that were looking to check out, and everyone's always in a rush. When you work at a store that sells seasonal things, there is always people who decide, oh, that's right, my kid has to be in a costume for whatever reason. And literally the morning of the event, they show up to come pick out and buy a costume. So what happens then? They are in a terrible mood. Their kid's in a terrible mood. They're very stressed and they have very limited time and they're going to make your life hell. So leading up to Halloween, that is what I dealt with. Now that we are talking about this, got to drink some peppermint tea to refreshen myself. We're going to go into story time. Now, I have so many stories of working here, which is funny considering I only worked there for 3 months. August, September, October, maybe a couple days in November, and then that was it. So yeah, somewhere between 3 and 4 months. So the biggest thing that I found out after working there for a month and getting ready to go into Halloween season is that starting at the end of September that year, we were going to be required to wear Halloween costumes for every single shift. However, we were only allowed to wear costumes that the store sold. And the reason for that is we were pretty much walking free marketing for them. However, this gets really awkward considering that the store at the time did not really sell teen costumes. They had 2 different types of costumes. They had kids and they had adults, which would be totally fine, right? Most teens can probably fit into adult clothes and costumes. However, this was the year when women's costumes started to become smaller and smaller and shorter and shorter. And I feel bad saying this, but it's very true. It was like the slutty costume trend, which is that any girl that's above the age of 18 can't go as a normal character. She has to go in the smallest costume she can possibly find because it's the only time of year where it's socially acceptable. Cue Mean Girls right here. Does anyone remember that movie? That was very true. So all the costume companies were releasing adorable kids outfits of characters like SpongeBob and cartoon characters and whatever is famous in movies and TV at the time and little kid stuff. And then the adults, we had the adult men, which were scary horror people, lots of Jasons, lots of Freddys, adult size Chucky outfits, things like that. And then the women's costumes were Ladybug or Bumblebee. But in this costume, it would be a corset with a mini skirt and garters for absolutely no reason. You couldn't go as a normal, cute little whatever. You had to go as a sexy version of it. So, cue me and my friend looking through all the costumes, trying to decide what in the heck are we gonna wear? Because again, I have to go up and down ladders all day. And we're dealing with a lot of adults here and we're teenage girls and it just gets very, very uncomfortable. So I chose, I think it was called the Cutie Sailor. And this was like a little sailor uniform except, again, non-TM because all these costume companies do not own any trademarks. It was a mid-thigh skirt, so not a mini skirt, maybe slightly longer, kind of like a navy blue skirt. A navy blue kind of t-shirt top with a little sailor collar and a little white hat that clipped onto your head. I chose this because it was kind of spandexy, so it would stretch. I wouldn't get too sweaty and hot in it, which is a real problem, when you're working retail and having to run around all day. And I thought, you know what? I like Sailor Moon. This is close to Sailor Moon. Good enough. Whatever. So there I was, the cutie sailor. And then my friend got, I don't even know what it was called, but it was pretty much a non-trademarked Pocahontas. It was a dress and it was one strap and it was it just looked like Pocahontas's dress. And again, it wasn't that short. So we kind of lucked out because our other options would be choose a men's costume that covers you completely fully, maybe even with a mask, and you will be burning hot and sweating the whole time. Or wear these tiny little mini skirts as you help people's middle-aged dads and see how comfortable that seems. So there I am in my cutie sailor outfit And after the first stint of working in the inventory and having to walk them down the ladders, I realized I should probably wear shorts under this. So I ended up wearing like shorts. And when it was really, really cold out, I would wear like an extra layer, like a long sleeve or another like short sleeve under it to kind of just keep me warm. Again, this is October in Washington. Sometimes we have really nice warm days and sometimes it's freaking freezing cold. So my scheduled shifts. Oh man. This brings me back to the days when no one followed rules and no one cared. Like I said before, the owners did not really like teenagers at all. And one of the ways that they would punish us is they would schedule our late night shifts for school nights. So I'm talking about like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was expected to be at the store from 4 p.m. to like 10 at night, sometimes later, because they only let us out of the store once everything was completely done. They wouldn't let us go even if our shift ended, if there was still half an hour or an hour of work to do. So there I am, it's dark and rainy in Washington, and I'm riding my bike to work after school, and I go and I'm in my outfit and I'm working my shift. Now, the funny thing about our store in particular is that we started this little joke that the store was haunted. I don't even know like where it came from. I probably heard it from someone else who worked there longer than me, but we would constantly make jokes about like the store ghost or the store haunting. And with this, we started to really freak people out. So like I said, it's a retail store. There's like lots of shelves full of stuff. And we also sold like some more expensive party stuff that was made out of glass. I think we had like trophies that you could buy for like sports teams and things that were made of glass. And every once in a while, you know, you're working a store, it's really late at night. I mean, really late at night, it's like probably like 9 p.m., but it's pitch black outside. It's like rainy and windy. And out of nowhere, you'll be cleaning a shelf and you just hear a crash behind you. And something has fallen like an aisle or two back, and you go and there's shattered glass everywhere. But for some reason, a lot of the teenagers started to get really freaked out because we started this stupid ghost rumor, and then something would fall off a shelf and all the girls would be like, oh my gosh, it's the ghost! And then they get all creeped out. I loved it. I love spooky stuff. I love getting scared. I've been on a lot of ghost tours. I've been to a lot of like Halloween haunted houses and Orlando horror nights and all that stuff. I love it. So I was like having the best time of my life. Me and my friend were total goofballs too. And so we thought it was like one big joke and we loved like creeping other people out. So it was a great time to like experience Halloween in this store. And again, you know, everyone there is there to experience Halloween. They're buying candy, they're buying costumes, they're getting ready for Halloween parties happening, and people are excited and like really, really happy. That's kind of my best picture into the past that I really remember. However, during this time, they also had a law in Washington state, which I'm really curious if this is like still a thing, but it said if you were a place of employment, you had to have a coffee pot somewhere on location, on site for staff to have. And so on my breaks, I would have, I think maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, and I would go to the back room, which was actually a warehouse, and I would sit back there. And I didn't really have anything to do. I mean, I couldn't even afford internet on my phone. That wasn't really a thing yet. So I'd sit back there with a book and start drinking coffee from the coffee pot. And that's when I realized, hey, you know what? When I drink coffee, if I add a ton of sugar and creamer, it tastes really good. But also, it can make me get through a shift and bring me my energy back. Because I'm going to school all day, coming home, leaving for work, and then getting back from work really late. So I started having coffee most evenings when I was working there, and this is definitely the year where I got addicted to caffeine, because starting the next year at school, I was drinking like coffee every morning before school. I couldn't go without. And look at me now, having like a venti coffee every single morning. Yeah, so thanks Party Store. You definitely got me addicted to caffeine. The other thing about working in the store that is just really, really peak beautiful memory for me. So there was a CD display thing that they had where they had a couple different CDs that they sold that were all like Halloween noises, Halloween songs, Halloween mixes, stuff like that. And people would come in and buy CDs for their parties. But they had this thing where you could like press the board and like test out CDs to see what's on it. But when no one was over there pressing it, it would automatically go on a loop of this one particular CD that we had. Now the CD was like cover bands that were singing whatever they had deemed Halloween music. So I'm talking about like Michael Jackson's Thriller, the Monster Mash, probably some Black Sabbath or something. But these cover bands were not very good. And it is so insane the amount of times, even just in a single like shift, that I would hear it being played over and over and over and over. My joke with my husband is that it made me actually lose part of my mind. Like I went insane because he loves the Monster Mash. He still sings it and he knows how much it irritates me. If I even hear it, I'm like, no, and I turn it off because of that CD that just played on repeat. And I remember the worst place to be was the registers because it was like the very start of an aisle and the registers were right next to it. So if you're up there and it's a really slow time at the store and it's quiet, literally all you can hear is people screaming the Monster Mash over and over and over in the CD display. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Don't listen to CDs that many times, guys. You'll lose your mind. I definitely lost part of mine. Now the customers, let's circle back. So I kind of talked a little bit about this, but we had a major Karen issue, like really, really bad. And the reason for this is moms coming in with their little kids who are in terrible moods from whatever it may be. And they see teenage retail workers and they're like, should I go be mean to that person? Yeah, I think I probably should. No matter what I did, or what I tried to help do, or what I didn't do, it was always my fault. And the good thing about working in retail is that over time, you really just learn to laugh it off and let things roll over your shoulders because people act ridiculous in public. People have absolutely no shame and they're so freaking mean. I don't know why, but there were so many times when middle-aged moms would come in and yell at me, usually because they had bought a costume, like one of those pre-packaged plastic costumes from us, and when they got home, something tiny in it was missing. Their 4-year-old's Woody costume didn't come with the Velcro on spurs that go on his little shoes, and now she is losing her absolute mind and freaking out while I'm like, I'm just trying to offer her a refund. I don't know what else she wants. Please let me go with my life and my sanity, lady. This would happen so many times with so many types of parents. I'm not gonna lie. The costumes that we sold were very cruddy. They were not nice. They were not expensive. They were the most generic costumes you could get. Most of the time when people would put them on, they would break right away. Things would fall off or tear or whatever. Or they looked so terrible, people would bring them back because they would just change their mind. They didn't want their kid or themselves to have to wear it anymore. So we did a lot of returns. That was pretty normal. We did have return policies about how long you could go until you couldn't return it. And once people found that out, they were really not happy. So then I got to deal with that. It would surprise you the amount of people that will buy a Halloween costume and then the week after Halloween, they'll return it. And we're like, we don't accept returns for them after like November 3rd. Sorry. We know what we're trying to do, but don't make us suffer for it. We also had a lot of giant rushes and then it would be totally dead. So like I said, people would be getting ready for Halloween parties on weekends and they would come in Saturday morning with a huge list of things they had to get. All their kids had to try on costumes. It would just be messy, chaotic, tons of people. And then we would have totally dead moments where there was absolutely no one and I had to either walk around looking busy or if I was lucky, I got up at the register and I could just sit there and kind of like read my book under it and hope my managers didn't walk by. So before I end the story, I do have to tell you guys kind of a funny mini story about working at the party store. And the reason I have to tell you this is because it is so terrible and cringy. I feel like I'm doing you a disservice if I don't bring it up. So, when you're a teenager and you work at a store with other teenagers, there is a chance you may get a crush on someone. And guess what happened to me? I got a big fat crush on a guy who I worked with. We had shifts together a lot of times, and he was a year older than me, so he was 17, 18. And from the moment I met him, I really, really liked him because he was very goofy and funny. We had balloons that we sold in store that were, in particular, they were noise or sound activating balloons where if you gave them a tap or you gave the string a little bit of like a tug, it would turn a button on inside and it would play music. So what we would do is we would sometimes partially blow up these balloons and we try to hide them around people. And then while we were on shift, we would take like a pen and we would just kind of casually toss it at the balloon when we walked by or something, so that whoever was closest to it would suddenly get like a big shock of like a screaming song at them. And this is how we would prank people a lot. And me and him were constantly doing this to each other, to my mutual friend who worked there, to anyone else. And it was great. It was really fun. So I decided the day that I found out was his last shift. He was going to be going off to college soon and he wanted to focus on his studies last year of high school. I decided at the very, very last minute, like literally as he was taking off his outfit or apron or whatever, and he was about to walk out, I gave him my phone number. And it was like so scary. This was like the first time I'd ever done this. And it turns out he texted me a day later and said, "Hey, can I take you on a date?" So I ended up going out on a date with my coworker. Now, by the time we scheduled our date, I think like I didn't work there anymore because they fired everyone at the end of the season. Again, they don't like teenagers. They don't want us there. Once the season's over, they kick everyone out. So the good news was he didn't work there. I didn't work there because we went on a date and it was absolutely terrible. I realized going on this date with him, number one, we had absolutely nothing in common. And number two, we didn't know how to talk to each other when we were alone, which was a very big issue. So we went out to Panera and had lunch there. And then afterwards, he didn't actually have anything planned for us to do. So we just decided to go drive around. So he was driving me around in his car and he put on a CD of musicals, which again, I like musicals. But he decided to sing every single one of them to me. And then when the CD ended, he decided to sing me other musical songs in a cappella, in a car, which I couldn't escape. It was the most awkward date I have ever been on. And then he dropped me off at home. We said our goodbyes and I never talked to him or saw him ever again. It was so awkward. I think everyone needs to have awkward teenage experiences because it makes you realize how much better life is once you're older, and oh, thank God, hopefully you'll never have to do that ever again. But I think back and it is so embarrassing and so funny. A lot of my friends have heard this story. They still make fun of it. I still make fun of it. It's just part of my story. Overall, working at the Halloween party store, I have so many great memories. I spent a lot of my paychecks buying Halloween stuff, buying candy, probably buying costume pieces. I don't remember what I was like cosplaying that year. I think I was doing Katara again, but I probably bought something for the costume there. I don't really know what. It was a great work experience. It was fun, it was campy, it was kitschy. It made me get experience with having to work with really irritated people. It also made me realize that retail workers have to work way harder than they're paid for. So again, be nice to them, be kind. Put your damn stuff away. Don't throw it on the floor for someone else to pick up. And also, sometimes work just sucks. And as long as you are there to make money and you can get through it in sound mind and sound body, you'll be okay. Find coworkers you can stick to, make friends, go on the crazy, weird, awkward dates. Just laugh and have fun with it. That was like the moral of this story, I guess you could say. So anyways, thanks guys for coming to listen to this story time. And don't you worry, I have more. And especially around conventions, I have a lot of very weird stories. So I will definitely come on here when I have more notes and more time to talk about them. However you celebrate Halloween, have a really good month, have a really good time. I'll be back here again. Bye guys. See you next time.